We are in sophomore English, and our objective today now is to be working with JC 1-2. In JC 1-2, we are going to be met with a couple of different kinds of, well, conversations, okay? The first will happen between the entourage, as I was just saying it, who's going down the main street in middle of Rome. And that's going to be Caesar and his wife Calpurnia and, of course, Mark Antony. The other conversation will happen between Cassius and Brutus, who will be going back and forth about who Caesar really is. Let's write that down in our notes, because that's one of the foundational questions of the early part of the play. Is Caesar dangerous? Now, you watched enough of an A&E video on the biography of this cat to know that there's a legitimate question about his humanity, his ethics, his morals, and a few other things like that. But the question here has more to do with Caesar as politician. Is he, in other words, a good politician? Does he have the Roman people as his first foremost consideration? Cassius's view on this will be no. Mark Antony's view on this will be yes. Brutus, unsure. So in your notes, let's say right away, Brutus is a guy who's maybe not real sure exactly how to think about Caesar. Now, this is a fairly long scene, so we want to pay particular attention to the movements on stage, off stage, of different of these players, okay? Let's go ahead now. We'll be listening to it in its entirety. Just flow the scene. Try to get a sense of the answer to some of these topics.
He's home! Caesar speaks!
Calpurnia,
Here, my lord.
stand you directly in Antonius' way when he doth run his court. Antonius,
Caesar, my lord.
forget not in your speed, Antonius, to touch Calpurnia. For our elders say the baron touch it in his holy chase, shake off their sterile curve.
I shall remember. When Caesar says do this, it is before.
Sit on, and leave no ceremony out.
Caesar!
Uh-oh.
Who called?
Let every noise be still. Peace yet again.
Who is it in the press that calls on me? I hear a tongue shriller than all the music cry, Caesar. Speak. Caesar is turned to hear.
Beware the eyes of Mark.
What man is that?
Sir, bids you beware the Ides of March.
Set him before me. Let me see his face.
Hello, come from afar. Look upon Caesar.
What sayest thou to me now? Speak once again.
Beware the eyes of Mark.
He is a dreamer. Let us leave him. But
Will you go see the order of the course?
Not I.
I pray you do.
I am not games. I do lack some part of that good spirit that is man's. Let me not hinder Cassius your desires. I'll leave you.
Brutus, I do observe you now of late. I have not from your eyes that gentleness and show of love as I was wont to have. You bear too stubborn and too strange a hand over your friend that loves you.
Cassius, be not deceived. If I veiled my look, I turn the trouble of my countenance merely upon myself. Vexed I am of these passions of some difference, conceptions only proper to myself. which gives some soil, perhaps, to my behaviors. But let not therefore my good friends be grieved, when which not Cassius with you one, nor construe any further my neglect than that poor Brutus with himself at war forgets the shows of love to others.
Then, Brutus, I have much mistook your passion, by means whereof this breast of mine hath buried thoughts of great value, worthy cogitations. Tell me, good Brutus, can you see your face?
No, Cassius. For the eye sees not itself but by reflection, by some other thing.
'Tis just. And it is very much lamented, Brutus, that you have no such mirrors as will turn your hidden worthiness into your eye, that you might see your shadow. I have heard, where many of the best respect in Rome, except immortal Cesar, speaking of Brutus, and groaning underneath this age's yoke, have wished that noble Brutus had his eyes.
Dangerous would you leave me, Cassius, that you would have me seek into myself for that which is not in me.
Therefore, good Brutus, be prepared to hear. And since you know you cannot see yourself so well as by reflection, I, your glass, will modestly discover to yourself that of yourself which you yet know not of. And be not jealous on me, gentle Brutus. Were I a common laughter, or did use to stale with ordinary oaths my love to every new protester, if you know that I do fawn on men and hug them hard and after scandal them, or if you know that I profess myself in banqueting to all the rout, then hold me dangerous.
It's the shouting. I do fear the people choose Caesar for their king.
Aye. Do you fear it? Then must I think you would not have it so.
I would not, Cassius. Yet I love you well. But wherefore do you hold me here so long? What is it that you would impart to me? If it be aught toward the general good, set honor in one eye and death in the other, and I will look on both indifferently. Let the gods so speed, because I love the name of honor more than I fear death.
I know that virtue to be in you, Brutus, as well as I do know your outward favor. Well, honor is the subject of my story. I cannot tell what you and other men think of this matter, but for my single self, I had as lief not be as live to be in awe of such a thing as I myself. I was born free as Caesar. So were you. We have both feathers with, and we can both endure the winter's cold as well as he. For once, upon a raw and gusty day, the troubled Tiber...
He's going to jack on Caesar now. Call him a wimp, basically.
Cassius now leaping with me into this angry flood and swim to yonder point. Upon the word, accoutred as I was, I plunged in and bade him follow. So indeed he did. The torrent roared, and we did buffet it, lust his sinews, throwing it aside and stemming it with hearts of controversy. But ere he could arrive at the point proposed, Caesar cried, "Help me, Cassius, or I sink." I, as Aeneas, our great ancestor, did from the flames of Troy, upon his shoulder the old Anchises bear, so from the waves of Tiber did I, the tired Caesar. And this man is now become a god, and Cassius is a wretched creature, and must bend his body if Caesar carelessly, but not on him. He had a fever when he was in Spain, and when the fit was on him, I did mark how he did shake. 'Tis true, this god did shake. His coloured lips did from their colour fly, and that same eye, whose bend up all the world did lose his lustre. I did hear him groan, aye, and that tongue of his, that bade the Romans mark him and write his speeches in their books, alas, it cried, "Give me some drink, Titinius, as a sick girl, ye gods! It doth amaze me. A man of such a feeble temper should so get the start of the majestic world and bear the palm alone."
Another general shout. I believe that these applauses are for some new honor on Caesar.
Why, man, he doth bestride the narrow world like a colossus, and we petty men walk under his huge legs and peep about to find ourselves dishonorable braves. Men at some time are masters of their fates. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves that we are underlings. Brutus and Caesar. What should be in that Caesar? Why should that name be sounded more than yours? Write them together. Yours is as fair a name. Sound them. It doth become the mouth as well. Weigh them. It is as heavy. Conjure with them. Brutus will start a spirit as soon as Caesar. Now, in the names of all the gods at once, upon what leap does this our Caesar plead that he is grown so great? Age, thou art shamed. Rome, thou hast lost the breed of noble bloods. When went there by an age since the great flood that it was famed with more than with one man? When could they say till now that talked of Rome that her wide walls encompass but one man? Now is it Rome indeed, and room enough, when there is in it but one only man? Oh, you and I have heard our fathers say, there was a Brutus once that would have brooked the eternal devil to keep his stake in Rome as easily as a king.
And you do love me. I am nothing jealous. What you are working to, I have some aim. How I have thought of this in these times, I shall recount hereafter. For this present, I would not, so with love I might entreat you, be any further moved. What you have said I will consider. What you have to say I will with patience hear. And find a time both meet to hear and answer such high things. Till then, my noble friend, chew upon this. Brutus had rather be a villain than to repute himself the son of Rome under these hard conditions as this time is like to lay upon us.
I am glad that my weak words have struck but thus much show of fire from Brutus.
Games are done and Caesar is returning.
As they pass by, pluck Castor by the sleeve. He will, after this sour fashion, tell you what hath proceeded worthing of today.
I will do so. Look, your Cassius, the angry spot doth glow on Caesar's brow. The rest of like a chicken train. His cheek is pale. And Cesar looks with such ferret and such fiery eyes as we have seen him in the Capitol, being crossed in conference by some senators.
Castor will tell us what the matter is.
Antonius,
Caesar.
that we have men about me that are fat, sleek-headed men, and such as sleep o' nights. Young Cassius hath a lean and hungry look. He thinks too much. Such men are dangerous.
Fear him not, Caesar. He's not dangerous. He is a noble Roman, and well,
Would he were fatter? But I fear him not. Yet if my name were liable to fear, I do not know the man I should avoid so soon as that spare Cassius. He reads much, is a great observer, he looks quite through the deeds of men. He loves no plays as thou dost, Antony. He hears no music, seldom he smiles. He smiles in such a sort as if he mocked himself and scorned his spirit that could be moved to smile at anything. Such men as he be never at heart's ease whilst they behold a greater than themselves, and therefore are they very dangerous. I rather tell thee what is to be feared than what I fear, for always I am Caesar. Come on my right hand, for this here is death. Tell me truly what thou
Pulled me by the cloak. Would you speak with me?
Aye, Casca, tell us what it chanced today that Caesar looks so sad.
Why, you were with him, were you not?
I should not then ask Casca what it chanced.
Why, there was a crown offered. And being offered him, he put it by with the back of his hand once. And then the people fell a shouting.
What was the second noise for?
Why, for that too.
They shouted thrice. What did the last cry for?
Why, for that too.
Was that the crown offered him thrice?
I'm happy once. And he put it by thrice. Every time gentler than another. And at every putting by, mine honest neighbours shouted.
Who offered him the crown?
Why, Antony.
Tell us the manner of it, gentle Casca.
I can as well be hanged as tell the manner of it. It was mere foolery. I did not mark it. I saw Mark Antony offer him a crown. It was not a crown, neither. It was one of these coronets. And as I told you, he put it by once. But for all that, to my thinking, he would fain have had it. And then he offered it to him again. And he put it by again. My thinking, He was very loath to lay his fingers on it. Then he offered it the third time. He put it the third time by. And still, as he refused it, the rabblement hooted and clapped their chopped hands and threw up their sweaty nightcaps and uttered such a deal of stinking breath because Caesar refused the crown that it had almost choked Caesar, for he swooned it and fell down to it. For mine own part, I durst not laugh, for fear of opening my lips and receiving the bad air.
But soft, I pray you, what did Caesar swoon?
He fell down in the marketplace, foamed at mouth, and was speechless.
It is very like he had the falling sickness.
No, Caesar had it not. But you and I and honest Casca, we have the falling sickness.
I know not what you mean by that. But I'm sure Caesar fell down. If the tag-rag people did not clap him and hiss him according as he pleased and displeased them, as they used to do the players in the theatre, I am no true man.
What said he when he came out of himself?
Oh, marry, before he fell down, when he perceived the common herd was glad he refused the crown, he plucked me ope his doublet and offered them his throat to cut. And I'd been a man of any occupation. If I would not have taken him at a word, I would have might go to hell among the rogues. And so he fell. When he came to himself again, he said, if he had done or said anything amiss, he desired their worships to think it was his infirmity. 3 or 4 benches where I stood cried, alas, good soul, and forgave him with all their hearts. But there's no heed to be taken of them. If Caesar had stabbed their mothers, they'd have done no less.
And after that he came thus sad away.
Ah, did Cicero say anything?
Ah, he spoke Greek.
To what effect?
Nay, and I tell you that, I'll ne'er look you in the face again. But those that understood him smiled at one another and shook their heads. But for mine own part, it was Greek to me.
A famous
I
line.
can't give you more than those two. Morales and fables, the winning scarfs of Caesar's images, are put to silence. Very well. There was more foolery yet, if I could remember it.
Will you sup with me tonight, Casca?
No, I am promised 4.
Will you dine with me tomorrow?
Aye, if I be alive, your mind and your dinner.
Good. I will expect you.
Do so. Farewell, both.
What a blunt fellow is this blown to be. He was quick-mental when he went to school.
So is he now in execution of any bold or noble enterprise, however he puts on this tardy form. This rudeness is a source to his good wit, which gives men stomach to digest his words with better appetite.
And so it is. For this time I will leave you. Tomorrow, if you please to speak with me, I will come home to you. Or if you will, come home to me, and I will wait for you.
I will do so. Till then, think of the world.
Well, Brutus, thou art noble. Yet I see thy honourable metal may be wrought from that it is disposed. Therefore it is meet that noble minds keep ever with their backs. For who so firm cannot be seduced? Caesar can bear me hard, but he loves Brutus. I'm a Brutus now, he Cassius, he should not humor me. I will this night, in several hands, in at his windows, throw, as if they came from several citizens' writings, all tending to the great opinion Rome holds of his name, wherein obscurely Caesar's ambition shall be glancing at. And after this, let Caesar seat him sure, shake him, or worse days endure.
All right, let's exegete here for just a few minutes. I want to point out some of the interesting moments in this second scene. Let's go through it now, kind of methodically. We'll start first of all at the opening sequence. Caesar, this is Shakespeare's point, is a very superstitious cat. He wants, for example, Calpurnia to be somewhat close to Mark Antony. He shows some disrespect to Calpurnia by suggesting that if Antony can somehow come close to Calpurnia and touch her, or she touch him, that maybe then this will help her be able to, have a child, etc., etc. Then the second interesting part of all of this is the relationship between Mark Antony and Caesar. We have a term in high school called brown-nosing, which simply means what? What does brown-nosing mean? If someone calls you a brown-noser, what does that term mean?
Teacher pet.
Yeah, that is to say, you're always trying to make sure that someone in authority respects you. Antony is the brown noser to Caesar, and we'll kind of see that right away. The next thing we should point out is that Brutus's first words have to do specifically with a soothsayer. Now, what is a soothsayer?
Fortune teller.
Yeah, basically some cat out of the crowd yells at Caesar, what? Beware the Ides of March. Now, the Ides of March are what?
15th.
That's right. March, the Ides mean the middle, and so the 15th of the month of March. Beware the Ides of March. Brutus will point it out to him. Notice Caesar at first, he wants to hear him say it again. Then notice it's an interesting phrase because we'll come back to it. Caesar says he's a dreamer, which kind of means two things. One, he kind of maybe is some kind of plays around with magic and black magic and that kind of thing. The other thing is maybe he's lost his mind. Leave him alone. There's something wrong with him, that kind of thing. Brutus's next first words, Brutus will say, I do lack some part of that quick spirit that is in Antony. Let me not hinder, Cassius, your desires. I'll leave you. And then they have this interesting conversation. Cassius and Brutus will begin to speak about what's going on with Caesar. Brutus is an interesting character for Shakespeare. He will create a guy who's a thinker. And it's fairly clear that Cassius wants to lead Brutus through a series of questions and observations to point out something is wrong with what's going on with Cassius. Notice Brutus will say, Cassius, at roughly line 37 or so of this scene, be not deceived. Now that's an interesting notion. Let's put it in our notes. This is one of the central themes of this play, deception. That is to say, how do you know when someone is actually telling you the truth, okay? Or someone is actually trying to help you versus hurt you. How can you tell by someone's face? There's a famous line from Shakespeare's play Macbeth. It says this, there is no art to find the mind's construction in the face. You can't tell by looking at people what they're really thinking. Notice that the first question Cassius will ask Brutus is, can you see your own face? Brutus responds by saying, no, the eyeball can't see itself, has to see in reflection. Cassius is going to say, I'm going to kind of hold up a mirror, and I'm going to make an observation or two, and you're going to begin to try and think differently about this guy, Caesar. What's interesting about this and troubling is that Brutus is a very loyal guy. So he's very loyal to Caesar. What Cassius wants to do is he wants to plant seeds of doubt in Brutus's mind, and he does that brilliantly. So let's go ahead now and just say it out loud. This is a play where speeches matter. Now, you would say, well, aren't all plays about giving speeches? In other words, you have these lines, you have to recite these lines. That's true. But in this play particularly, Shakespeare wants to point out the powerful rhetorical effect that certain kinds of words can have on people. All right? So, for example, I've had sophomores who study this play who began to catch on quickly to the power that Cassius can have over Brutus by asking certain questions of him intelligently. And then the next time that they found themselves in a similar circumstance where someone was trying to lead them, rhetorically speaking, they were immediately able to identify, oh, I get it, you're trying to jack with me, the same way Cassius kind of messed around with Brutus. So, for example, two friends are talking, and then a third one walks up and they stop talking. And then one of the two that were talking but stopped walks away. And then the other one says, what is your relationship with her? Why? Oh, I was just wondering. You do know her, right? Why? Oh, I don't know. I was just. Why? Was she talking about me? See how? Right? And notice that the other person didn't say anything other than ask a question. Right? This is the capacity to use language to kind of lead or to, let's put it in our notes, manipulate. This is a play where language allows people to manipulate other people. And we get to kind of watch it. It's very interesting. It's interesting that Cassius will tell Brutus, you really don't, you don't see yourself very well. Let me help you do that. Brutus says, there's this shouting that takes place off stage. What is going on, by the way? 3 times, what is it? We find out 3 times, what is it they want to make Caesar, they who?
The king.
In our pyramid, they who want to make Caesar the king. You're right. That's that mud we were talking about before, right? They want to make Caesar king. Cassius will say, what do you think's going on? And Brutus is like, I kind of am a little upset. Cassius is like, you're not a little upset, you're a lot upset. Let me give you good reasons to be a lot upset. And Brutus will kind of slowly be led, step by step, by Cassius, into a position where Cassius wants him. Why? What's Cassius's ultimate goal?
Kills him.
He does. He wants to get rid of JC, right? He sees JC as standing in the way of his own power. And to that degree, he wants to help Brutus get over it. Of course, Cassius will point out at roughly line 90 or so that Brutus is really into honor. Over and over again, the word honor gets used in this scene. And Brutus is an honorable man, which makes, again, this scene that much more difficult, right, for Brutus. Notice you've got a question about Cassius's his view of Julius Caesar. Notice what he says at lines 140 or so. He says, men at some time are masters of their fates. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings. What has he said? Put it in your own words. What's he just said about what's wrong with us? He says what? We are underlings means what?
Below everyone else.
Caesar is trying to be the big boss, and we're letting him do it. Which is code language for what? What's Cassius really saying? This is time to fight back, right? We have got to do something about this Julius Caesar guy who thinks he can tell us what to do. Notice Brutus will say at line 160 or so, what would you work me to? In other words, Brutus is aware. He's kind of being led. Wait a minute, what do we call this when somebody talks you into doing something that you don't want to do?
Peer pressure.
It is peer pressure, and we're going to kind of follow this as it goes, right? We're going to see it. There is some interesting development of characterization here as well, with some foreshadowing as well. Caesar will come back on stage, and he'll look up at Cassius standing there with Brutus, and he'll say to Mark Antony, I really would like people around me who don't have the look of Cassius. There's something about him I don't trust. Now, this is an interesting irony. In this play, Caesar is right most of the time, but he doesn't know it.
Dramatic irony.
It is dramatic on stage irony, isn't it? He will say about Cassius, I don't trust him. Mark Antony will see, there's nothing, I mean, come on, really? What's that guy going to do to you? Well, the audience knows what that guy in history does do to him, right? He invites him for a little walk to the Capitol building, and then he and a whole bunch of conspirators will draw out swords or knives, and they're going to stab the guy over and over again. Dark irony, huh? Notice the crown, we're told, will be offered to Caesar 3 times. How does Caesar not accept the crown? He's like, no, I better not. No, I better not. They're like, no, we really want. He's like, okay, no, I better not. Right? The 3rd time he's ready to take it, but what happens?
He falls.
What happens? Do you have any sense of it?
He passes out.
No, you're close. You're close. Caesar has an epileptic fit. That is to say, he's an epileptic. And so he starts foaming at the mouth, he falls down. The observation will be made that he has the falling down sickness. The Romans didn't really understand a lot about... I'm sorry?
I thought they said he didn't have it.
Yeah, there will be an observation that ultimately that notion of the falling down sickness, there's something wrong with Caesar. But because he's Caesar, you have to be careful how you talk about it, what you say about it. But the reality is there's something up. Cassius is quick to point out, he isn't the one that's falling down. We are the ones that are falling down. That is to say, Caesar is wanting to have all of the power, and we're letting it happen. We need to stop him. Right? We need to stop him. At the end of the scene, let's go to it real quickly. Watch this. The very final lines of this scene. Look at it in your folio. Caesar has left. Brutus has left. Cassius is alone. In some ways, Cassius will play kind of the villain of our play. You might make an observation. He's like Iago in the play Othello. And now we get a soliloquy. Oh, what's a soliloquy again? Do you remember this one? You bet, you bet. Completely alone, and he's going to tell us what he really thinks. Look at what he says. Well, Brutus, are you reading it with me? Well, Brutus, thou art noble, yet I see thy honorable metal may be wrought from that it is disposed. Therefore it is meet that noble minds keep ever with their likes. For whoso firm that cannot be seduced. What's he said? What has he just said? He says, I can manipulate you. The fact that you are honorable ultimately can kind of lead to your downfall. I can manipulate you because you think of yourself as so honorable. For whoso firm cannot be seduced. Caesar doth bear me hard, but he loves Brutus. Do you understand? Cassius wants to get to Caesar, and the way he's going to get to Caesar is through Brutus. And then finally, what's he say he's going to do? It's interesting. The way he's going to get to Brutus, how's he going to do it? What is this thing about I'm going to write some letters or something? Did you get a sense of this? What does he say he's going to do? Do you understand what he says he's going to do? I'm going to write letters, he says, that do what? They kind of flatter Brutus. And I'm going to throw him in at his window. And Brutus is going to read these letters about, wow, you're such a great guy. You're the best of Romans, and be able to plant a seed maybe in Brutus's mind that he should begin to fear Cassius. Caesar. All right, let's go to 1:3 real quickly now. It is the night now. You need to write this down so you know what you're looking at. It is the night now of March 14. Uh-oh, why is that important? That's one day before what? That's it. That's one day before the Ides, right? The Ides of March. Next thing we got to point out. Nasty weather. Write it in your notes. Anytime we have bad weather in a Shakespeare play, that means something bad is about to happen. By the way, the Elizabethans of Shakespeare's day, they really believed this. If there was bad weather outside, they would oftentimes not go out. They would be so afraid or worried, okay? There's all kinds of terrible omens, in other words, all right? You've got two different ways to interpret these omens. Okay? Casca, terrified. Okay? And he fears the storm, and other omens predict terrible events to come. Cassius interprets the storm as a sign. This is all good. Caesar will be overthrown. Cassius then will agree that Caesar's rise to power has to be stopped. And we should point out, stopped by any means necessary. Cinna, again, I told you all these C names, okay, so don't lose track of them. Cinna, another plotter, will come onto the stage, and they'll discuss how to persuade Brutus to join their plan. Jot it in your notes real quickly. Why does Brutus need to be a part of their plan? Why is he a significant part of their plan? I don't understand. Why don't they just go do it themselves? Why do they got to have Brutus as part of their plan? Anybody want to take a stab at this one? How come, Ms. Schroepel? What do you think? Why do they need somebody like Brutus as part of their plan?
Because he's so, they trust him, and he's...
Good. He's very honorable. So Caesar's going to trust Brutus. But I don't understand. Why didn't Cassius just go stab him himself? Why didn't Cassius just go kill him himself? Why do they need Brutus as part of their entourage, as part of the conspirators? What do you think, Dora?
Because if somebody he already didn't trust did it, I don't really know how it would hurt.
What are these guys, these plotters, beginning with Cassius, what are they worried about after Caesar dies? You got it. How is having Brutus going to help them in relationship to the people?
Because Caesar has his... He'll be like, yeah.
You're right. He gives some kind of legitimacy to their plot, right? In other words, if you can get Brutus as part of this plan, then the plan all of a sudden starts to look like a good idea. And so they're going to work at the end of our act. They're going to work to make sure they can get Brutus